Welcome to Nerdarchy for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted. How is everybody tonight?
Excellent. Tonight, by the gods, we're going to talk about D&D and gods and some stuff.
So for Dave and I, we're actually jumping in the Wayback Machine. Many years ago, we actually had our own campaign world, some of which wound up finding its way into our current campaign setting. So this is I guess a talk and a walk down memory lane for us as to how we set up gods in that world. I know we initially created 30 gods, divided them up as evenly as possible amongst the 9 different alignments, covering all the different third edition domains that were out there, and covered quite a lot. And for each and every one of them, we created these sheets of a deity's portfolio, and we're gonna go through some of these things. But first and foremost, I'll read off the different categories, so that if you're actually interested in really fleshing out the gods of your world, that you might be able to learn from what we did long ago. This is a lot of work if you want to do this for all of the gods of your world. But honestly, if you're really going to be playing a campaign world over and over again for years worth of campaigns, having this kind of information is actually really useful to do, because then you don't have to worry about trying to figure it out on the fly. And when you've got a very divinely inspired world, it's really beneficial to have this.
I just want to say, did you folks see we got how to be a great game master in the chat? Ooh, we got a celebrity.
How you doing, guy? When I first opened up the chat, I was actually kind of offended at first, because I at a glance I saw how to be a great game master and sucks, and I'm like, what is someone ripping on Guy? That's not cool.
That's not cool at all. We're about to roll this mofo.
And then I'm like, oh, that's actually Guy in our chat. Cool. So, did you want me to dive right in, Dave? Do you want me to, hold
Well,
off?
I think one of the things we should do is, because we always forget to say what people can find in the description to these live videos that we do.
Sure. You want to do it, or want me to do it?
You know what? You put it all together, so why don't you let them know what you put in there?
Sure. All right. So at the top is all of the typical, Nerdarchy links. You want to get our Dice Roller app. You want to find us where we are on social media. You want to check out, the Nerdarchy convention page. It's all there, as long as Dave didn't take the con page out. We have all the different articles that went up last week on the website. I kind of do it, Sunday to Saturday. Starting off with the one that's a conglomeration of our D&D ideas put forth by Dave, Doug, and myself. We have all of the videos that we did last week on the website. You can go and check those kinds of things out. We have RPG related Kickstarters that are down there, including Nerdarchy sponsor Easy Roller Dice. If you want reversible dice bags, I just happen to get this one in the mail, so that I can be able to show it off to you guys. So if you happen to be like me and love black and orange and lions, you can check out their cool new dice bags. Highly recommend it. They're awesome. But Kickstarters like that happen to be down there. And then if there are any gameplays that we've been, or anything else that we happen to be doing that is off of our channel, like Saver Dice, or when I'm in mini terrain domain games that go up on YouTube, those links are down below. Obviously, he doesn't have session 4 up yet for mini terrain domain, but it will be there eventually, since we played that last Thursday.
Sweet. So yes, find all the stuff, all the things down below. Now we can get going with the things we're going to talk about.
So with a deity portfolio, obviously you're going to talk about a name, but you also want to give them some kind of titles. And so for the first one, we have Belize, who is a greater deity in our world. Titles are Elf Mother, Fey Maiden, Great Forest Mother, and the Green Lady. Her alignment is neutral good. favored weapon is a short bow. Sacred animal is a butterfly. She is a greater deity, therefore there is no father or mother. She does not have siblings, but she does have the offsprings of Lannis and Kredgfer. Uh, Allies, Lannis, Kredgfer, obviously, Adalin, Erasha, Emodius, and Lilanus. So we're seeing already like a whole plethora of different gods. Enemies, Morganas, Sheolanzir, Tiravana, Malastestria, and Olgoth. Areas of concern, nature, fae, sylvan creatures, and beauty. The symbol is a mighty oak with a celestial sun on the left and a moon on the right. Alignment of worshippers or any non-evil. Alignment of priesthood is also any non-evil. Domains, and this is back in third edition: animal, plant, good, magic, and elf. And then duties and practices of the priesthood is to teach how to live in harmony with nature. Now, with that last one, sometimes the duties could be immense. Some of them here, like a paragraph. Others are just that simple one statement. But by going through all of these kinds of things, you are building numerous amounts of relationships and ties to the world. So right off the bat, the fact that she's a greater deity means her influence within the world is larger than other deities, but it also means that she is probably far more removed, and it is her agents that are going to be doing the influencing and the conversations with mortals, not necessarily herself. The titles allow you to link histories and things with those. So when people make religion checks or history checks, you can tie those in. And if they happen to pick up on, oh, well, the Green Lady, well, that's actually referring to a god, not just some adventurer or, some unknown, person. And, those are great things to be able to tie in when you're going through the exploration pillar. When you get into favored weapons, that was very much a third edition thing, but you could definitely play around with it with fifth edition. Sacred animals, that definitely is going to get into the imagery and how a character might choose to dress, or what they might wind up having as an animal companion. Siblings, offspring, allies, and enemies wind up building your relationship of not only your pantheon, but organizations on the world and how they're going to interact with each other. Obviously, if you're serving Belize and there's an organization that is worshiping one of the enemies, like Morganas, then you really want nothing to do with them, or you want to use as little, connectivity as possible, because you might be actually aiding an enemy of your deity. Areas of concern and domains for fifth edition, they kind of, they're kind of crossed unless you happen to have a specific domain, like the class archetype domain happens to fit in within one of those things. The alignment of worshippers, that was something that was required in third edition. Like your deity had a required alignment, not so much in fifth edition, but we had that there. And then of course you should always have a duties and practices for your gods, so that you've got the capacity to know exactly what's actually required of you as a priest or as a follower, so that you can be doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff informs your NPCs too, and role-playing choices and things that'll come up in your game. Periodically, as Ted goes through some of these, we're going to also take some questions. So it's not Ted just reading you guys for an hour, because that'll drive me nuts, if not you guys and gals.
Yeah, he's got to listen to me more than enough.
William Blower's question: would you handle PCs trying to ascend to Godhood, or how would you handle PCs trying to ascend to Godhood, or would you avoid it like the plague? Well, first of all, I would ask, why is it my players are ascending the Godhood, or why do they believe they can ascend the Godhood? What in the world would make the characters, not the players, believe that is something that's attainable? And I would absolutely let them try, in the words of Matt Mercer and many DMs that have come before him, because really that could suck up, a whole campaign for 20 levels or so, at the end, maybe you let them achieve it, maybe you don't. But it could be a fun ride getting there, trying to get there.
So I would look at it, number one, as how is the world set up? In the world that we created these sheets, that's not possible. The pantheon is exactly 30, and it's locked in at that. So unless a deity were to die and someone else were to rise to take their mantle, that's not going to happen. In the current world that we're playing, we have a open pantheon. Many of these gods that I'm talking about, we're actually going to import or have already imported into our world. But there's an open pantheon. As long as you can carve out a territory and lay claim to it and do whatever it takes to achieve godhood, great, you're a god. Have fun, enjoy. Pantheon's as big as it needs or wants to be. And that is a very different dynamic. So you have to have that kind of idea, set. Are they attempting to climb to godhood so that they can thwart some kind of threat that mortals are just incapable of doing? That sounds like an amazing thing, and literally just achieving the godhood gives you the strength and the power to do what's necessary. And it's the act of, hey, I'm now a god. All right, now the campaign ends. Go ahead and narrate how you save the world. And then you can play on with your characters. You're in the next game worshiping your old ones. How awesome would that be? But it's really gotta start with what is your preface? What is the main reason for why they're trying to climb those ranks?
So remember, folks, put question before your question. It makes it so much easier for us to find. El Samo wants us to talk about cleric godly intervention starting at level 10. Well, one of the things is by having kind of like the sheets that we made up previously and having that much information kind of filled out, it does give you some areas to go with. Now, I've seen in a game where one of the players used their divine intervention, and they made the roll, and the GM, because it was a god of like drunkenness and debauchery and kind of ale, a tidal wave of ale kind of washed over the battlefield and did a bunch of negative stuff to the enemies, which aided us. In my own game, the god of secrets and mysteries, that cleric got divine intervention and used it, and it unlocked the secret of more powerful magics that the player was able to call forth just for that battle. Now, Ted had a character in his campaign that was 20th level cleric, and he was expecting and prepared for that player to use divine intervention, but that player is weird, and they didn't use it. I don't know why, because why would you not use divine intervention?
So I came prepared for that one with 3 different outcomes. I'd already seen, the Scarlet Sisterhood game where the cleric was able to cast 2 spells around as long as one of them was healing, and that definitely fit in with what Gaius might be able to do. Time and nature definitely fitting on those side, on that side. So I'm like, all right, well, that's one option, but what if he doesn't necessarily need that and he's just calling for just to bring the smack down? So I brought two options. One, I had made a creature that could be summoned, and I was planning to be able to just drop a mini right on the battlefield, provide a brand new stat block for an ancient treant that he would have summoned, would not have any kind of summoning issues. There was no concentration effect because it wasn't necessarily a spell. It was just boom, you've got this great amazing Trent that's on the field. Then the last option was just a butt ton of damage, depending upon how he worded his request. And it was like, all right, you're just gonna put a womp down on all the monsters that are on the battlefield currently.
So there's a question from Zareth Gaming. How would you handle a PC messing with things made by gods not meant for ordinary mortals, like the Weave, Silverfire, etc.?
So it's really weird. Like when we're talking about that kind of stuff, we're talking about upper echelon tier capabilities, in my opinion. And this is where you're directly dealing with the gods' upper minions, I feel that like there is definitely a scalable power range when it comes to dealing with the gods. And we actually had somebody comment in here about saying that oh murder hobos would have to come in and try to kill the gods to do exactly what I said when we talked about evolving. Your greater gods are above that. Like you're not really going to take one of those out. You'd have to be going after one of the lessers, because we're talking gross ridiculous amounts of power just becoming a god, let alone ascending throughout the tiers of godhood. So if a god is telling you, hey, you're mucking with shit that you're not supposed to, you probably should just stop mucking, because it's not going to go well for you. Yeah, we're going to deal with, tiers of things to try and dissuade you. But if the god actually has to come down and put the womp on you, you're going to lose.
It really depends on the campaign setting, the world you're playing in as well, how much access the gods have to the world, if they can actually interact with mortals. There might be special rules, they can't directly do anything. But there might be other things they can do, like Ted said, sending their followers, sending monsters, sending a Solar down to have a discussion with you over these things. Um, and also, just mucking with those things in general would be very difficult as well. Something done by the gods is going to be very difficult to undo or to change. Not that it shouldn't be able to be done, but it would also make for some interesting plot points.
So I will say that when it comes to your campaign world, if you're the DM, you don't have to. If you disagree with anything that I'm saying, do it your way. You're the DM. This is completely and utterly your call. I'm just sharing, how I would do things and what we've done in the past. When it comes to, as Dave says, dealing with the power of the gods, yeah, you can definitely have a lot of fun with that. But if you've got a cleric in your party, they're already being a conduit of the gods. So undoing something that another god has done, it literally could honestly be something as simple as obtaining enough power to channel divinity to undo it. Not channel divinity, divine inspiration to make that happen. And voila, it's done, as long as you have that god's ear and you can make that happen.
There also may be very, very severe consequences for said actions.
Well, yes, because you are again mucking with the gods, and the one whose power that you've disrupted, they're now upset with you. And again, see that whole point about dealing with the powers of the gods and their minions.
Whenever we talk about this stuff, the opening to the Kevin Sorbo Hercules TV show just kind of plays in my mind.
That's funny. I
Wes,
I watched the hell out of those shows. So.
I know you did. Wes Hitchcock, what would actually be the mechanical benefit of a PC achieving godhood? At the end of the campaign, the mechanical benefit would be like, turn in your character sheet. You're no longer playable.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You won ish.
It's one of those things, like, you can't, there is no mechanical effect of saying, yeah, I'm a god. Like, you're talking about well beyond what is within the mechanics for D&D to deal with. To kind of case in point, somewhere on the channel, one of our awesome fans ran a 40th level game. It was a 20th level. You multi-classed into two things, and we went and fought some major enemy. And I think that kind of power level is still pale in comparison to what it would be if you were a lesser god.
So we also had a question about us personally, extra average. How old are y'all? Just curious. I am 44 this year.
I just turned 41 this month.
I know I would look like I'm about 60, but had a hard life. What can I tell you? So we got a question from How to Be a Great Game Master. How do you handle players who just ignore gods? I find it frustrating when they say, "Oh, I don't believe in gods." It is very strange for someone to be like, "I don't believe in gods," when miracles literally happen, or they kind of explain they kind of like rationalize it away as something different. I honestly though, like, I don't think it's my job as the DM to handle how their characters feel about it. Now, there may be direct consequences that they have to deal with because they don't believe in gods. They may offend gods, but more likely the agents of said gods. And those are the consequences I think they're most likely to have to deal with, especially at the earlier levels. At the higher levels, when they've gained a lot of power and knowledge, then they may even be to the point where they actually offend the gods themselves.
So the way I look at that is, can you ask someone to go stand outside, in a forest and say, I don't believe in trees? The evidence is there. And I don't want to get into arguments with people, because a lot of, I can't say a lot, but people that I have gained with in the past who, claim that their characters don't believe in gods, or they don't want to, worship a god, is because they themselves, don't follow anything, and they are adamant about it. And that is their right and their belief. I take their saying I don't believe in the gods in the game as they don't follow. Like, they're not worshipers. They have not encountered anything as that character that makes them want to actively worship or pay homage to deities. And I don't make a big deal out of it, but it's the only rationalization that I, as a DM, can accept when the gods are ever present in a magic rich world. Literally, we have two full classes of two full classes for characters that are powerful enough beings that they can bestow magic and abilities upon their followers. Warlocks and clerics, and the things that grant warlock packs are, for the most part, not quite lesser deities, but they're close enough that I would lump them into the same category. So, you know what? You want to say you don't believe that they exist? That's fine. If that helps you rationalize how you want to play your character, fine. I, as a DM, I'm going to rationalize that you just don't follow the gods, and we'll let bygones be bygones.
I would use it for an opportunity for role playing, where when you encounter people that are staunch believers in said gods, they're going to try and persuade you, convince you, and philosophy debates are going to happen, especially if you make this well known. So so it would just be another trait that the character has that may come up during the game, and they also might be denied certain services because they don't believe in the gods. Like,
and
clerics might be like, well, I can't heal you with my god magic.
and that is a completely great point. Again, going back to that player or type of player that they don't believe out of game, I don't want to force a secular argument on them if they are that adamant about it. And we've had a player who was very angry that when god stuff happened to come up for his character, and it was forced upon him.
Just laughing at one of the comments. Quoting Galvatron. You can't go wrong quoting Galvatron.
No, you can't. Jeez.
What?
William says, have a PC in question die, get tormented because they didn't have a god, and then have them come back. By torment, I mean torture. In detail. Gruesome detail.
Oh, here you go. Someone has a task for you, Ted. Well, I don't know if you'll get XP or gold for this though, if you accept this quest.
Sure, what's the
Could
quest?
you guys make a post on your blog and convert all the 3.5 DDs from your setting to 5e?
Well, I mean, I don't have these things digitally, and I've got, what is it, nine pages here, I think I said.
Yes.
So
and we're missing 21.
Missing 21, so many of them would have to be
recreated.
Although we do have a number of the names thankfully, because we've got the allies and enemies, figured out. So I'd have to actually sit back and see who's actually missing. Um, but we've got Belize, Sheolanzir, Malastestria, Adalin, Stromgard, Maltratus, Morganas, and yes, well before any of us started being aware of Harry Potter, we had even above greater deity, we had the elder deity of the one whose name is not spoken.
Bob.
He was referred to as Bob. So titles were the Harbinger of Doom, the Unmaker, the Lord of Seasons, the Soul Taker, the Grey Lord, and the One. So we got the Matrix going on over here. Alignment was true neutral. Favored weapon was the scythe. Sacred animal was the raven. He had no mother, father, siblings. His offspring were the primary good deity of Adalin and the primary evil deity of Malastestria. He had no allies or enemies. Areas of concern were life, death, beginnings, endings, seasons, cycles, rebirth, existence. The symbol was gold, silver, and copper circles intertwined. Alignment of worshippers were any. Alignment of priesthood was neutral. The domains were animals, destruction, healing, plant, protection, and renewal. The duties and practices of priesthood, guardians of the balance and the natural order. The priests of this order are charged with seeing that the balance persists as the Creator intended. It is known that which is most abominable to the Maker is creatures of undeath. His priests are charged with seeking out this unholy blight and destroying it. Most hated of the priests are those who follow Olgoth. The most celebrated holy days are both the solstices and the equinoxes. All ceremonies are conducted beneath the open sky. In fact, this ancient order claims no structure as a place of worship, for no place is as holy as that which has been created by the one whose name is not spoken.
So what his name was a palindrome? Is that what we decided? And the idea was if his name was ever spoken again, existence would end. So that was like hidden lore that we had in the world that we were going. The idea was to release it eventually, and that could be like the cataclysmic event to either end our world or an epic quest to keep it from ending. But that was definitely something we're working on.
Yeah, so it's like the fact that his name spoken once brought the world into existence, but his name spoken again would destroy it. And since his name, forward and backwards was the same, it was weird.
And it prevented us from having to come up with another name.
Actually, one of the names that I did mention earlier, who was the deity of the Arctic and lycanthropes and not lycanthropes, the Arctic and rangers and that kind of stuff, was Kredgfer. And we sat. There were times that we didn't just sit and play D&D. We sat and we wrote D&D as we were coming up with our campaign world stuff. And our friend Pete, he wound up grabbing a whole bunch of different D20s and he just rolled it, and we just translated that to the alphabet, and we came up with all these letters, put it together, and it's like, what the flip does that spell? And that's how the name Kredgfer came into existence.
As you do.
As you do. And now I actually have a little bucket or a little container full of just lettered dice. So if I ever need to come up with a name, that's something I can absolutely do again if I so desire.
Very good. Off Game wants to know if you have a dead god shard in your character, how would you go about exploring that new power and new want that he will get as it gets stronger with levels? That sounds like a warlock to me.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good warlock to me.
I mean, isn't that one of the options for otherworldly is a dead god? So that's.
I mean, I would actually take a little bit of inspiration from Forward from Critical Role and have it so that like you could totally do like old druid style from back in the day where okay, yeah, you can only have so many people who are granted this power because there's only so many fragments but they're seeking each other out, not to put the god back together, but to steal the shards and to acquire power that way. So every time you would wind up meeting and slaying one of your equals, the pieces would fuse together, and you'd have a bigger piece, and thus get access to more power. That's what I would do.
So, what Guy wants to know, so is it possible then to have an anti-god, an absence of godhood, that which provides power? Wasn't there was a priest in 3rd edition that was just that, and I feel like it was just like 2 letters was the name of the priest.
I don't remember that. I'm not saying you're wrong, because I don't remember enough to refute it. But that sounds really weird. Really weird.
But yeah, so the question is, how would you incorporate that into your almost like a void of divineness that could grant power? One, I would probably look at it as a warlock pack, because like if it's not a god and you can follow it, it almost certainly feels like a warlock. But I could also see going with paladin with the right set of oaths, especially maybe like a paladin of conquest.
Right.
And it'd be an interesting way to do paladin of conquest that wasn't evil. Like, as opposed to being evil, you just to seek the destruction of divine. And to you, it doesn't, good or evil, you don't really care. Good, evil, or neutral, you don't care. You just want to eliminate it all.
It's me being the person that I am, and that cleric being my favored class. It's really weird trying to figure out how I would do a game or a thing where, like, yeah, we're against the gods, or we're against this, or create something that's designed to bring down the gods. That's very, very hard for me to wrap my mind around. I'm not opposed.
So in the DC universe, you have the thing that the dark side wants, which is the anti-life equation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there was something similar in Marvel as well. So like I kind of think of those things, right? But just insert divine instead, and use that. But yeah, I could definitely see creating an order that spawns warlocks and paladins, and
you happen to say the right word. You could also go monk, like they're spiritual and have a way of belief. So like they could be like, well, we don't need the gods. We can achieve perfection ourselves.
So soul sword and I don't know what the warlock branch would be. But
soul sword and others.
Soul sword and I'm so goth.
So I think you and I might agree on this one. But Joe says, what is your favorite pantheon across history or pop culture for D&D inspiration?
For Asgard, it's got to be the Norse for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where I would go as well. There's just so many fun things that are there, and it's a culture. There's a lot of stuff that ties in really well to a fantasy setting. So
many of the other religions rip off the Norse mythology. So just saying, Odin hung on the woe tree. The tree of woe for 7 days and 7 nights with a spear through his side.
Yeah.
Before a certain somebody was ever heard of. Just saying. So what do you got there, Ted? We also have more questions, I believe.
I wasn't seeing any other questions that we got going on, but they might be further up the chain. So we mentioned we did Belize, we did the one whose name is not spoken. So I've actually used a little bit of Shale and Zir in 5th edition, so I'll go into he, she, it. I forget exactly what gender this one was, but this is a greater deity, the Shadow Lord, Nail Biter, Lord of Serpents, the Vile Whisperer, the Evening Tormentor, the Bringer of Dark Dreams, and the False Sleeper. Neutral evil. The favorite weapon was a Kopesh, which We'd probably have to, switch that to Scimitar because we don't have Kopesh's in 5th edition. Sacred animal, reptiles, clearly. No offspring, allies, and no father or mother, siblings, offspring, or allies. The enemies are Ralentar. Trying to remember who that one is. Areas of concern are reptiles, dreams, the night, and the desert. The symbol is a crescent moon entwined by a serpent. Worshippers are any non-good, alignment of priesthood, or neutral evil and lawful evil. The domains are evil, skelly folk, trickery, earth, and darkness. Duties and practices to spread fear of Sheol Zir throughout Ulfganya. Priests are to seek their master's awakening from his ancient slumber. Also, chief among duties is to cause as much trouble as possible for Ralentar's followers. And is also their charge to look after Sheol Zir's sacred children, i.e., reptiles. All rites and ceremonies are held in the dark of night. Special and most holy are the nights of lunar eclipses. Among the holy days, the serpent solstice is the most revered to the followers of Sheol Zir, the day when the worshippers remind the populace why they must never forget the Lord of Night.
So, also, I guess one of the other things we can bring up too is just the simple fact that when talking about gods in D&D, there doesn't actually have to be gods. You can have they can worship concepts and ideas as well. It doesn't have to be there's things to make decisions. Do you have a pantheon? Do you have multiple pantheons? Do you have like mono? What's the word I'm looking for?
Monotheistic?
Yes, religions in your world. Is that all you have? In conjunction, or are they in conjunction with a pantheon or multiple pantheons? Or, is it a world where like everything has a god to it? Like this coffee mug has a god, the sky has a god, or maybe the sky is broken up from the clouds and the wind and the air above. So there's a lot of different ways you could go about it, and you can combine them and mix and match them.
Well, you've also got the concept of being able to have one deity that holds an immense amount of power and that is worshipped by one faction as one thing, another faction as another, and they, the two factions fully believe that they are speaking to one deity, and that the others is completely something far and above different. While once you obtain enough divine knowledge, you understand that they might in fact be one and the same. And we actually have our primary greater good deity is like that. To the humans, he's a Dalen. To the elves, he's a Leven. To the dwarves, he's Grandar Sunforge. So that was one of the things that we did, so that you could still have gods for specific races, but they're just viewed differently. Now, to the humans, elves, and dwarves, they think that those three are separate and complete, distinct deities until you've done enough to kind of garner more knowledge, and then eventually, it's like, look, you can go and tell people, but no one's gonna believe you.
So, Guy says, I have to dash. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your answers. Time to create a divine slaying organization.
Well, Guy, thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Let's see. William Blowers wants to know, how would you handle false gods? By that, I mean someone who says they're a god, but just a really powerful wizard, sorcerer, warlock, fighter, bard, who by charisma has convinced others it is a god. If enough people worship you, you might be a god.
Realistically, that's not for me as a DM to deal with. If I'm putting it out there and the players buy into it, great. If they don't, well, you know what? We'll see how things shake out. If it's a player, who's trying to convince cultures that he's a god because he's got that much power, that's amazing. How good are your rolls? Let's see what happens.
Let's see your role playing. How are you pulling this off? And there may eventually be consequences to said achievements.
Are you mimicking a god that already exists and trying to claim being them? Well, then you're going to insult that god. If you're just like, oh, well, I'm a new god, I'm blah blah blah. You know what? I'm certain the god of trickery is going to find that really amusing and just might give you some perks.
So Wes Hitchcock, Dave, Norse is amazing in 5e. Are you familiar with the Journey to Ragnarok, an adventure module? They tie the Norse pantheon into a couple really neat subclasses for not warlocks. No, I am not aware of it. I'll have to take a look and see what that's all about.
So we have off game wants to know: do you feel like warlock is the other side of the coin for paladin?
Once upon a time, yes, but because paladin doesn't really have a side of the coin anymore, I would say no. Um, because paladins aren't tied to any particular
They're
alignment.
you they've changed the classes a lot with fifth edition. So like, druids have their circles. They don't necessarily have to be tied to gods. Paladins are in order, monks are away, warlocks follow a specific thing, and they might not even know what exactly is granting them power. They're just like, oh, blah, do you want stuff? Sure, here you go. It's amusing that way.
So I'm actually looking at the thing, and it does look pretty cool. The art in it is pretty sweet. The Ragnarok.
Journey to Ragnarok. I'll have to check that out as well. Um,
Like I said, the art is fantastic.
so Jennifer, I'm thinking she probably wants to know what, not why, tabletop RPG was your first. So what was your first, Dave?
I actually think the first thing I actually played a session of was Gamma World, but I only played one session of it. Then after that, it was D&D, first edition.
Second edition D&D for myself, and that is the bulk of what I have played. Although there are a handful of different books behind me that I've checked out and tried other things, but ultimately I just keep coming back to D&D.
I think it's really just a matter of time, right? If we had more time, or people to run other games for us, we'd probably play other games for
Yeah,
sure.
we used to game 3 times a month. Two of them were mine and Dave's game. Fifth, we played fifth edition D&D, and then somebody else would run some another system, and we would run 3 to 6 session games, roughly. So twice a year to 4 times a year, we were trying out a whole new system, and those things have gone away.
So, just to reiterate what we've mentioned before, in the description you can find links to the videos we did this week, the articles that went up on the website. Ted likes to put together RPG-related Kickstarters that are going on that he finds interesting or enjoyable that you might want to check out, and there is also other things down there as well.
Yeah, the link is not down there for it, but the lasers or Dungeons and Lasers ended today. They did, really well. They did over 400,000, and they have already opened up on their website. If you want to get in on it still as a pre-order, so if you look up Dungeons and Lasers, you can still get in on that. There was a lot of stretch goals that got unlocked. I looked at it yesterday, when it had barely crossed 300,000, and I'm like, oh, that final stretch goal of 430K. Well, that's sad. I doubt that's going to happen, but they hit it and they beat it by over 10K. So I was like, wow, they had an amazing last 48 hours.
So, Nerder Doug wants to know: would you play another game if you had to play adolescent children characters? No, Doug, it's freaking creepy.
I don't know. It's really hard to, to be like,
Rugrats, the RPG.
There are times that we've played board games, and my favorite board game is Betrayal at House on the Hill, as I've said many times on the channel, and that one I do tend to go to one of the kids, but
But that's not a role playing game either.
That's not a role playing game. So like role playing kids is weird.
I think it is weird too and creepy. So Jennifer, do you all have experience with the original D&D box sets? Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, Immortals? Yes, I played quite a bit of those. Matter of fact, I want to say I was actually exposed to the red box first, but I didn't actually play it. I just remember my neighbor coming over with it and opening it up and being like, ooh, ah, and him like explaining it to me. But then soon after that, he brought me to friends of his house, and we played Gamma World, and I have no idea even what my character was. I just know my brother Jeremy tagged along, and he made a mutant hawk person that was like 20 feet tall.
All right, so Off Game wants to know, mortal heroes messing with gods in war with each other. Do you feel like the mortal has no place in such a powerful battle, or can you go full on God of War?
Well, I'm not really that familiar with the game itself, but I do believe you could finagle it and figure out how that works. I could definitely see the gods using the players, the mortals, as pawns in their machinations.
Mortals being manipulated or mechanized by powerful beings. That's a pretty standard trope with D&D. So I could definitely see that being done and done well. It just requires a little bit of thought and realize that, okay, well, in some ways you're going to have to kind of manipulate and counter manipulate. Like, we know what you're going to do, so regardless of what actions you're going to take, this is really actually helping my cause. So thank you very much.
So Chris wants to know, are balanced encounters really possible by level and tier? I find the challenge system to be a bit on the garbage side.
Oh, I mean, making a balanced encounter is actually, possible, but it is not as simple as, following the guidelines set in the DMG. I love D&D. Wizards of the Coast is awesome, but sadly you screwed the pooch on that formula.
Well, and here's the problem too. There's like a lot of different ways to play the game that changes the formula. Yes. Like, we don't use a lot of encounters. Therefore, our players tend to nova their encounters more often than not. So that formula breaks down if the idea is you're going to do 6 to 8 encounters in a session. And I don't even know how you would, like to me, that seems like a really, like, it's like a 12-hour game. Because, an account, even like a fast encounter might take, 30 minutes to an hour. So, like, multiply by 6 or 8, that seems like a really long time.
All right, so we got, two questions that just popped in. Vibersib. I actually answered this question earlier in this chat. Cleric is mine, and, Dave's favorite class. He kind of, he's got a flavor of the day.
He said favorite character.
Oh, okay. Sorry, the chat's moving, so it favorite character that I've ever played. Well, that's different. Do you have a favorite character?
Oh, absolutely, Dave? Uthengar. It is the character that I played the longest and had a cool arc and had a fun beginnings, the most fleshed out. And like I said, it's the first character I've ever played from first level to 20th level, so I got to live with Uthengar the longest.
Well, I'm very happy to have provided that. I've got a lot of characters that I look back on fondly. I don't know if I could claim any as my overall favorite. Ragnarok, my druid barbarian, was freaking amazing. Tolbathagonar, my undead slayer, wound up being a ranger cleric when he converted from 2nd to 3rd edition, which Dave was the DM for that one. Ryan was for Ragnarok. The most that I am looking forward to replaying was actually a character for 5th edition that I ran in a one-shot with Dave, and that's my gnome wizard, Freckle. So I at some point in time I will bring him back out.
Wow. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Jimmy McCoy, is Nerdarchy open for pre-orders since the Kickstarter is now closed? So for a time, we will be, once the Pledge Manager releases, there will be ways to get involved with the Kickstarter even though it's done. And up to a certain point, you'll kind of be able to get in on the action as if the Kickstarter was still going on. Just email me at nerdarchy@gmail.com and I'll put you on the list to get you the Pledge Manager, and just keep your eyes open. You'll see us putting it places, because we've been getting a lot of emails from people going, hey, I missed it, I didn't see it, my paycheck didn't come in, whatever it is. And obviously we want to get this in as many hands as possible. And once the Pledge Manager closes out, the price is going up. People who get it before we get the first print run are going to get it at the Kickstarter price. People afterwards are going to get it at what the retail price is going to be. And also, like, the cool things from the Kickstarter itself, you'll be able to access them. So you can either email us at nerdarchy@gmail.com, or wait and you will see the Pledge Manager will make it available for folks that want to get involved and missed it for whatever reason.
Yeah, once that actually goes live, it will be something that we'll have a link, on these live chats, and we'll make sure that it is shared out there and that we'll make people aware. So we got 9 minutes left. Do you want me to get into any more of these?
We did have another question, Jennifer. Have you found character death isn't nearly as much of a danger in 5e compared to previous versions? Yes and no.
I would say that this is the easiest edition of D&D to come back to life. But I mean, we also have at first level, things can really just out and out kill you, and there's no coming back from that at first level.
You know what? If you mismanage resources or make poor decisions in 5e, it is kind of easy to die. Being unlucky as well. Because in previous editions there were different ways that you could die, right? So overall, it is much harder to die in 5e. That being said, once you get dropped, if somebody hits you, you have 2 failed death saves. If you roll a natural 1 on your death saves, you have 2 death saves. So in those instances, it becomes kind of easy. If you get hit twice while you're down, you're dead. So depending on how your GM is, and how the play style of your game is, it can be fairly easy to die, or it can be extremely hard. Listen, if I have a cleric that keeps popping up my players over and over again in a combat, once my enemies have seen that a couple times and it's an intelligent foe, once they drop the cleric, they hit him once. That's the general rule. So, and then they have to deal with the next roll is if someone doesn't bring them back or whatever.
So, that strategy is why I will not be playing a cleric in Dave's game again.
Also, you know what? If you're fighting an unintelligent foe and they drop you, and if it's like an animal or a monster, I would absolutely have you drag you off. So if it manages to drop you, the next round it drags you off. The round after that, you are probably dead. Only because that's how creatures like that are going to interact with the world anyway. They're not going to drop you and then fight the next thing. No, they're going to probably grab their meal and get it to go. Put the sucker in a doggy bag and let's hit the road.
So Vibrasib apparently is not aware of what we did for the Kickstarter. Do you want to give a quick spiel as to what that is for those who happen to miss it?
Oh, so we did a Kickstarter. It was cool. No. Let's see. I think it'll get weird if I try and put it in the chat. Let me give you a link. TED Talk.
I just wanted you to explain it, but out of the box encounters is designed as a 55 encounters that drop into your game, wherever, whenever is needed. If your players happen to go in a weird or awkward direction that you hadn't planned for, you can reach over, grab your out of the box, and whip out an encounter that's gonna, get you back on track.
It's everything Ted said, and so much more. Let's see. That link should take you to the Kickstarter, so you can actually it's done, but you can actually take a look at it and see. The reason I had to go grab a Bitly link because if I put the Kickstarter link in there, it has the word Nerdarchy in there, which messes up the link. So yeah, you can just take a look and see what it was. Question: would a bandit be hesitant to hurt a cleric for fear of angering that cleric's deity? Same thing, I suppose, for paladins. That's a personal choice on the bandits' part, right? How do they feel about the gods? Are they afraid of the gods? Some bandits might kill followers of gods because that's how they get their jollies. That's just whatever you. The answer is yes. Yes, a bandit would be hesitant to hurt a cleric for fear of angering the cleric's deity if you feel like that's how that bandit acts. And also, that would add a little bit of depth to your bandit encounter, which kind of goes back to our don't use bandits, use this monster instead, when we kind of said use better bandits, which made people really angry. So I think that absolutely does work in a game. So we have just a couple minutes left to take any questions. Just remember, folks, in the description you can find a link to Nerdarchy the newsletter, and that is a way to where you can learn how to game with Nerdarchy. We do a monthly fan game with you folks, the fans. And we used to record them. Now we don't. We just kind of chill, relax, and start up a Zoom call and play some Dungeons and Dragons.
So next week we will be doing our monthly giveaway, and I'll announce who. I'll be running the game, but I'll announce who the players are that are selected. So getting in on the newsletter is also a way of getting in on that game. And if you want to get in on the monthly giveaway, you can support us over on Patreon for $1 a month. That automatically enters you into our monthly giveaway.
It also gives you another entry into the Gaming with Nerdarchy.
It does indeed.
Raven just brought up a great point, and hello there, Raven in Australia. Viking raided churches because that was where the money was. You're welcome, Jennifer. We are happy to put out this content, and you find folks watching our content. It would just be me and Ted talking in his basement to each other. After a while, it'd be weird. Like if Nerdarchy ended, I think I would still show up at Ted's place once a week to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, even when we're not playing. He'd just be like looking at me like, "Why are you here? We got to talk about the thing."
I got a job to do, dude. No. We got to do videos. Why? Nerdarchy. That tattoo on your shoulder? Yeah, Nerdarchy.
Frank, you're quite welcome. We do this because we love doing it. It's a blast. I have the best job in the world, being a professional nerd. Nerdcore 911. I just got into D&D. I don't know what way a character should get their stats. Should I roll them, or good luck, or take the base stats? Well, that depends on your DM and the group and how you folks decide to do stats. I mean, we've rolled them, we've used point buy, and we have used standard array. Generally, I prefer point buy or standard array because dice generally hate me. The character I'm playing now, Bolt, it was actually rolled because two other players decided to roll their stats, so I felt peer pressured into doing it. And I rolled some really good stats. I rolled them right in front of Ted. And, so... But, all of them are viable. Just depends what you want to do.
My stat rolls suck. Has been that way for a long time. Tolba Thagonar, that, Undead Slayer I mentioned earlier, his stats were freaking amazing when I rolled them for 2nd edition. And they were rolled, straight down right in front of Dave. But we also, used a different stat generating method, which offered up, higher average stats. But like I said, they were still pretty good. But other than that, most of my stats have, kind of sucked over the years. So with 5th edition, I always opt to use the standard array or point buy, because then there's no gamble. I know exactly what I'm getting.
So John, someone needs to make home brew for Viking mushrooms that they ate to rage out. You should write that down, Ted. There should be an effect for people that aren't raging and people that are raging. Put that somewhere.
Mushrooms.
Rage mushrooms. While raging, not raging. Jennifer, you guys remind me of people I used to game with. Oh, they were real a-holes too, huh? She says great peeps. Or are they just old? Oh, so with that, I think it is that time where we're going to end the chat. But we're going to be back next week. We're going to do it again. Mondays, we do the patron-only live chat. And on Tuesdays, we do the everybody live chat. So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.